Beginning in 1970, the Swiss artist Herbert de Still set about assembling a new kind of para institution, a mosaic-like intermedial space that he titled the Museum of Drawers, or Das Schubladenmuseum. Housed in a repurposed silk bobbin box, it would become the smallest but most complete museum of modern art of the 60s and 70s, a 20-story skyscraper in miniature. Upon its completion in 1977, it contained 500 works by 508 artists. Its 501st work was a metal slab by Ed Kienholz, produced in 1974 to operate as the base on which the box as building stood. From the 5th of January to the 16th of February 1979, the Museum of Drawers was on display at the ICA in London. To mark the exhibition, the BBC produced a 9-minute TV film tour through its rooms, rendered by Blue Box technology. Zooming into a photographic composite of the cabinet building transposed into the London skyline, we enter the museum at this projected scale. We are given a guided walkthrough with de Still, sometimes superimposed into the drawers themselves, before being absorbed into the eye of John D'Andrea's piece via a sequence of ocular works as the film concludes. Item GREE4 107 in the Lily Greenham archive, held in the special collections at Goldsmiths, University of London, is a flyer for the 1979 ICA exhibition. The front of the flyer contains 3 uncaptioned black and white images. In the centre, top and tail by artworks relating to 2 other exhibitions also on show at the ICA, is a photograph of Drawer 19 extended, taken from above to reveal its 25 rooms and artworks. 1 unit in from the left and 1 from the front is Lily Greenham's contribution to the museum. In the rough bitmap of the flyer, it is barely legible, but the bold, lowercase italicized header is recognisable. Her room in the Museum of Drawers reads, "Sorry, Lily Greenham cannot be pigeonholed." For the past 3 to 4 years, I've been cataloguing the Lily Greenham archive, and in 2024, I co-curated a large-scale retrospective of her work at the Badischer Kunstverein in Karlsruhe. Throughout this research and cataloguing process, "cannot be pigeonholed" has been on a loop in my head, a kind of slogan or aphorism. Greenham's compartmentalised refusal to be pigeonholed into Still's museum conjures a playful rejection of order and classification that typifies her approach to work and life. One that was underpinned by an enduring interest in language as multi-faced material, a tongue-in-cheek sense of humour, and a disciplinary and geographic restlessness. In an interview with Urs Graf published in Das Werk in 1972, she goes as far to identify this attitude towards classification criteria as a fundamental facet of her practice. Here she says, quote, "This is something you could call a concept. I am completely against classifications. I think you can't classify people because when a person is alive, then they change and their concepts also change." In An Art of Living, an essay published in the fall 1995 issue of Inventario, she ruminates on her personal outlook and production over the preceding years, identifying change and change activities as the constants across her varied output. Quote, "When I was heavily involved in one of the disciplines I actively pursued, I identified with certain professional groups for a time, but I was never exclusively dedicated to any single discipline. Others also seem to recognise this, because in the field of music I was often described as a painter, in the visual arts I was seen as a poet, in literary circles I was a performer, and so forth. And this was and still is the true situation. Some people perceive me as a guest figure in their own domain. Neither nationality, nor religion, nor professional, nor any sort of classification cover my own concept of myself. Categories don't fit my character nor my soul. I am a stranger in a strange land." In a letter to Dick Higgins dated 9th of February 1984, she attached an incomplete, condensed, and informative report on what I do, etc. In it, she describes herself as a writer, poet, composer, painter, performer who has broadcast, performed, and exhibited in most countries of Western Europe, in Canada, the United States, and North Africa. Lily Greenham was born in Vienna in 1924 and passed away in London in 2001. She did not leave a will and had no known relatives, but a group of friends and colleagues, namely composer Michael Parsons, musicologist and instrument maker Hugh Davies, and systems group artist Jeffrey Steele, collectively agreed to look after her materials and papers. Some of these materials were eventually stored at goldsmiths for safekeeping, and through a number of incremental donations and collections, in bin bags, plastic bags, and boxes, formed the basis of the Greenham archive. Lily Greenham came from a background of performance. Her mother, Raina FIFA Lax, was a renowned soprano opera singer, and her father, Gabriel Lax, an impresario. Her stepfather, Egon Madsen, a singer. She sadly lost both of her parents during the Holocaust and was displaced to Denmark and then Sweden. She returned to Vienna in 1952 to study at the Academy of Music and Performing Arts, and during this time had formative encounters with the Vienna group and their experiments with language as optic and acoustic material. She had also undergone some studies in painting and began to develop a visual practice of collage, etchings, and prints. She exhibited some of this work in Vienna in 1960 at Gallery Young Generation, but it was when she moved to Paris in 1964 that her work shifted into the field of op art. These works, which she described as serial, constructive, kinetic, achieved significant acclaim and wide recognition. Becoming loosely associated with the Grave and Nouvelle Tendance movements, her op and kinetic pieces were included in several major exhibitions, including Mouvement 2 at Galerie Denis René and Lumière Mouvement at the Musée d'Art Moderne in Paris, The Responsive Eye at MoMA New York, Kinetics at the Hayward in London, and the 35th Venice Biennial. She subsequently left Paris and abruptly stepped away from the optokinetic, refocusing her attentions on sonic articulation and vocal performance. After a period of touring and with extended stays in Lisbon and Madrid, in 1972 she moved to London, where she based herself for the remainder of her life. As she puts it in the letter/report to Dick Higgins, mainly between 1969 and 76, I travelled with a programme of international concrete poetry of the 50s and 60s, transforming visual poetry into acoustic events, demonstrating a particular approach to speech as a musical expression. She became particularly noted as a performer/interpreter of other concrete poets' works in their original languages, and in 1970-71 released a record with the then Frankfurt-based Edition Hoffmann, titled International Sprachexperimente der 50 und 60 Jahre / Tendentious Neo-Semantics 1970 in English. Side 1 of the record consists of recordings of her reciting poems by other artists in English, Spanish, Danish, Portuguese, German, Swedish, and French, including pieces by Vaughan Steen, Pierre Garnier, Ernst Jandl, Edgar Braga, Gerhard Rühm, and Elena Asins. Side 2 is made up of vocalizations of her own texts, including pieces such as Experience, Object-Subject, Authority, and Underground. In 1973, she coined the term lingual music to describe her developing approach to manipulating and layering reel-to-reel tape recordings of her own voice, using speech as a basic element for electroacoustic processing, a means by which she described herself as completing the circle from music via language back to music. This manifested in sound works such as Relativity, realised in 1974 at the BBC Radiophonic Workshop, that strangely utopian creation of the BBC which funded avant-garde music from the licence fee-paying public. Traffic, which was recorded with Hugh Davies at the Electronic Music Studios at Goldsmiths, and Circulation, a stereo French language version of Traffic that explored the possibilities of early digital sampling long before the availability of commercial samplers, using a PDP-8 computer at Cardiff University and software created by the programmer Marcus West. She also continued to tour and perform live, both individually and with other musicians, including the Danish free jazz saxophonist John Chakai, multi-instrumentalist Bob Downs, and as part of a structured improvisation trio with Peter Cusack and Hugh Davies, using her voice as built-in instrument. In the bios and inserts back matter of issue number 30 of the Viennese literary and art journal Freiburg, Greenham is listed as resuming artistic activity in 1982 with home computer graphics. Freiburg is one of only 2 places that her home computer graphic works, which are included here in Radical Software, were published. The other being Delphin Journal in 1986, where they were credited as mathematical dome fragments. In the pages of Freiburg, they appear in issues number 30, 1982, and number 45, 1985. In the 1982 issue, 4 computer graphics are reproduced, alongside 3 poems by Greenham. And in the 1985 issue, there are a further 4 graphic reproductions, prefaced by the poem Being Loyal and a rare photograph of Greenham performing on stage. Here, each is given a specific title beyond the autological computer graphic, home computer graphic, or micro computer graphic, as they are referred to almost interchangeably elsewhere. Tumbling Continents, Computer Tree Trunk, Bowtie Dance, Sci-Fi Landscape. Some home computer graphics were sold and collected as artworks, notably to the V&A in London, who also have a version of her op art collage, Study of Differentiation and Similarity in Visual Perception, and in the Neue Galerie Graz. But as far as I've been able to find, these works were not formally exhibited during her lifetime. A makeshift box/folder in the Greenham archive holds a number of loose studies, tests, prints and copies, a number of which are also in the Radical Software show, scattered in a vitrine. In there's also a loose handwritten note which reads, Permanent Open Studio Exhibition. And in a photo album at the Neue Galerie Graz, they can be seen arranged and framed on the wall in her flat in London. They were made on a Sinclair ZX81 microcomputer using basic programming language, printed on a small ZX printer roll, which she would then photocopy, collage, rearrange, and photocopy again to produce final compositions, often scaled up and resized. In some instances, these were also hand-coloured after printing as well. As friend and correspondent Larry Went notes, the little Sinclair was relatively inexpensive, around £50, and her tape equipment had fallen into more costly disrepair by 1982. To me, the fluttering helical forms of her home computer graphics and the stutters of language that begin to emerge in them, LLL, HHH, nur, den, vien, offer a kind of spiraling path or through line to her output. From the gestural abstract forms of her early etchings, to the calculated repeating patterns of her op art works, to the phonetic explorations that often explored isolated vowel sounds and the basic elements of speech, to her open attitude towards emerging technologies for sampling, manipulating, and composing. As such, they map out a kind of territory of tumbling continents and computer tree trunks that charts her entire trajectory and practice as writer, poet, composer, painter, performer. Thank you.